To join us. Thanks, Kelly. I'm Bethany Shiner, for those who don't know me or who are new here. I'm one of the co-conveners of the Freedom of Thought Network, which we've been running for a few years now. It's quite an informal network where we just created a forum for scholars and academics who are interested in freedom of thought as a legal right and issues associated with it could come together and showcase their work in progress or even the finished work. And so it's very discursive, it's very kind of open forum for people to come and present. So if any of you here would like to present in future, please just send us an email. You would be most welcome. Today, we are absolutely thrilled, really genuinely excited to welcome two scholars who have recently co-edited a really important book. We have Professor Ana Maria de Villa Lopes, a professor at the University of Fortaleza in Brazil and coordinator of the International Network of NeuroLaw and Human Rights. We also have Sebastian Smart, who is a senior research fellow at the Anglia Ruskin University at Cambridge. Together, they undertook this enormous project of co-editing this open access book with Kyo Komorula, who can't be here today. This book is significant for many reasons, but it includes a lot of scholars from South America, Latin America, who are perhaps for the first time writing in English. So it's making a lot of this research accessible in English, which is really significant and I hope creates new pathways for collaboration and new perspective on the issue of how to regulate neurotechnology. So just one moment of housekeeping. This is a roughly 1 hour slot. Sometimes we do go over because we're sloppy like that and we don't like to stop the conversation. We are recording the presentation, but not the Q&A. So we will have roughly half an hour from our speakers and then we will have plenty of time for discussion. So please stack up your questions and let me hand over to Anna Maria to begin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you, Professor Bethany, Professor Sebastian, for the opportunity to share some ideas. Again, my name is Ana Maria Davila Lopez. I am law professor.
Oh, looks like Anna Maria is frozen. We'll give her a moment. I will just send her a message.
Hello, hi. Yeah.
Now we have.
Hello, you're back.
Raining. I told before to Bethany that it's raining a lot here. Because of that, I had some problems. Sorry. Well, I start again. My name is Ana Maria Davila Lopez. I teach constitutional law and also human rights for graduate students here at the University of Fortaleza. I also coordinate the network, International Network on NeuroLaw and Human Rights. This network was created in 2021 and is composed by 4 universities: my own university, University of Fortaleza, University Austral of Chile, University Externado of Colombia, and also Pontifical Catholic University of Rio Grande do Sul. Our activities are also developed with the participation of researchers from other universities, Brazilian universities, and universities around the world. Our activities are funded by two Brazilian federal agencies. In Portuguese is CAPES and CNPq. CAPES is CAPES and CNPq CNPq. The last 4 years, we organized 3 international meetings in 2022, 2023, and 2024 with the participation in each one of more than 30 researchers from Latin American countries, from Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, Argentina, Uruguay, and from other countries of other parts of the world, like England, Spain, Portugal, United States, Taiwan, Japan. The first Congress, the first international meeting in 2022, we have as the main speaker, Professor Ramiro Orias. At that time, he was the president of the Inter-American Juridical Committee of the Organization of American States, which have approved a declaration of principles on neurotechnology and human rights. 2 years later, this organization approved a second document. In my opinion, this second document is the best today in the world. It's very, very good. This document has 10 principles. It's very good. Continuing, in 2023, we have the participation in our international meeting as a main speaker, Professor Rafael Yuste from the Columbia University. He came to our city, our university, to share some ideas, especially about the existence of 5 neuro rights. And he said that it's very important to regulate neurotechnology advances because he was very, very worried about free will, especially free will. The last year, in our international meeting, we have a special guest, Professor Nita Farahani. Nita Farahani from Duke University, she also expressed his worried about the risk of neurotechnologies. I would like to say, and it's important to be clear that our network is not against science. We are not against neurotechnology, neuroscience. It's not like that. The objective of our network is to look for the harmonization between the neurotechnology advances and human rights. Neurotechnology and neuroscience have brought many benefits for humanity. There is no how to deny it. It's very clear that, but also bring many problems. Some neurotechnologies have the potential to modify, to manipulate, to erase, or implant ideas in our brains. In addition, they can also violate our privacy and also modify our identity and increase inequality gaps. In the last 4 years, our network looks for creating spaces for democratic and academic debates to listen to people for the global north, okay, but also for global south, on how to build ethical and legal standards to limit some of these advances. We already published 3 books and other papers. After each international conference that we organize, we publish a book with the presentation of the speakers. This was the first one. This one, the second book, and the last one, this, which is launched today. And you can download these books in PDF totally free from our network. Our network website is neurorights.com.br. This book has the presentation of the speakers. The last book, which is launched today, and this task is going to do for Professor Sebastian, is totally published in English. It was a challenge for us, but it's how we hope to expand our field of action and to have the chance to be able to disseminate our research and also to change ideas and how, and also to learn from other researchers for the global north like you. I hope this activity is the first one with the network of Professor Bethany. I hope to have the opportunity to have more opportunities to discuss, to develop other projects in common as a way to contribute for the development of the NEUROLAW and the protection of human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's such a impressive introduction to an incredibly impressive network. Congratulations on all that you have done in creating that space and publishing so much work. Let's go to Sebastian now, who I think will give us an overview of this book that we're launching today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bethany and Kelly, and to the whole team, the Freedom of Thought Network, for this very kind invitation to present our book. I'm really happy to be part of this event, of this launch, and to have the chance to share a bit about how the book came together and what we hope it contributes as well. And before I dive into it, I want to say a big thank you to Ana Maria as well. Not only did Ana Maria invited me to be part of this project, but she's also been, I would say, the driving force behind the international network on NEUROLAW and human rights, which, as Ana Maria has already said, has been running for almost 5 years with a huge amount of impact. And personally, at least, I've learned quite a lot being part of this network, and I'm pretty sure that others have done so. And since Ana Maria has already given a bit of background of how the network started and what it's been doing, I won't repeat too much here, but just to say that the book we are presenting today is very much the product of that collaborative space that Ana Maria was talking about. It brings together, I'll say, different disciplines, different regions, different ways of thinking about how the law needs to respond to these emerging neurotechnologies, and how we can do that in ways that center on human rights. So that's the key topic that I would like to develop a little bit further. I will say, try to answer why this book and why now. And as you all know, and has already been highlighted actually by Ana Maria, we are living through a very particular and historical moment of huge and rapid acceleration of neurotechnologies. We have brain-computer interfaces, neural data collection, AI-driven diagnosis, emotion recognition systems. I mean, you can name it. These technologies are not speculative anymore. They are being tested, they are being deployed and commercialized across different sectors. And while they hold enormous potential, and Maria already said that we are not against technology, they also raise serious and urgent questions from a legal, from an ethical, from a political point of view as well. No? So much of the debate so far, and I'll say quite rightly, has focused on freedom of thought. And I know that that's a key interest of many here today. But one thing that we really wanted to emphasize in this book is that the legal implications of neurotechnology go far beyond that. They touch on, I would say, the full catalog of human rights: privacy, equality, labor rights, democratic participation, non-discrimination, due process, social rights such as access to healthcare and education, and many others. No, so we are talking about technologies that can influence what we think, how we feel, what we remember, and how we behave. No? So the core question at the very heart of this book is, how do we govern this technological shift in a way that protects human dignity and democratic values? So what really sets, I will say, this book apart, and what I think makes it such a rich and maybe timely contribution, is the fact that it's rooted in global South perspectives, and also particularly from Latin America. And that's not just about adding diversity here or bringing new case studies. It's about rethinking the frameworks that we are thinking about for this kind of topic. So, and a brief historical point of view, but as many of you know, Latin America has historically been a dependent region, I would say. No? In the 1970s and the 1980s, dependent on the dictatorships supported by the US in the 1990s, by a extractive economic model developed under the Washington Consensus, and now it's a region that is dependent on tech optimists. Initially from Silicon Valley, I'll say. I have called it at some point the Silicon Valley Consensus, but now I will say also increasingly a tech dependency from China as well. And it's a region where technologies are developed elsewhere and are imported and deployed, often without strong regulatory safeguards in this region. And it's a region where the social, where the legal, where the political consequences of these technologies are felt extremely intensively, and where resistance and innovation often emerge from lived experiences in the region. So in this context of the last 40, 50 years, we have learned in the region how to take human rights seriously. So apart from all these dependencies, we have developed, I will say, an important human rights scholarship, and I think that that's pretty well developed and showed in this book. So these scholars, most of them, but not all of them, related to the legal profession that contribute to this book, I would say, aren't just translating ideas from the global north. They are producing original, critical, and highly contextual approaches to questions of neurotechnologies and human rights. So particularly for Latin America, what does dignity, for example, means in a highly unequal society? How do we talk about consent where a structural coercion is present? What does freedom look like in context of surveillance and discrimination, among many, many other questions? So this book, I would say, is not just also a collection of academic papers, it's also part of this broader effort to bring these contributions to a global conversation. And that's why putting it in English was super important for us at this moment. No? So conversations about neurotechnologies, justice, and human rights. And I think it's a reminder as well of the regulatory leadership and normative creativity that can and should, I would say, come from the global South. And we did all these complex challenges. So how does actually neurotechnology intersects with power, with inequality, with regulation? We structured the book, and this was mainly an idea from Ana Maria. So again, to her it goes all the credits around 5 thematic areas. No? And the first one is about neuroethics. And let me very briefly walk you through some of the highlights, which I will say this very first part of the book really set the stage for the rest of the book. So the book opens with a chapter written by Maria Pia Chirinos, who offers I will say, a powerful critique of brain-centric approaches in neuroethics. Instead of reducing moral agency to neural activity, she argues for a maybe richer understanding of human person, a recenter of the body and our social embeddedness, as she called it, in very ethical reasoning. And she does that through using Aristotle, Kant, and contemporary neuroscience, and remind us about the importance of dignity. Then we have a chapter by José Octavio de Castro Melo, who dives into the promises, the paradoxes of transhumanism, and kind of at the core of this chapter, as I read it at least, is how we really benefit from the ideas of enhancing the human condition through neurotechnology, and what happens when that enhancement are only accessible for a few. No? So brings the ideas of inequalities very clearly into this chapter. The third chapter in this section is developed by Monique Pirro and Pedro Araujo, who explore the issue of how neurotechnologies intersect with mental health, labor, and eugenics. And they analyze the growing use of neurotechnologies tools in work and environments. So this kind of first section pushes us to questions, I will say, foundational assumptions of about what kind of ethics are we using to evaluate neurotechnologies, who is that ethics for, and how do we ensure it's not just protecting certain rights or certain people, but the whole spectrum of human rights. The second section goes more deeply onto the politics and economic power. So it's mostly about the political dimensions of neurotechnology and how these tools can be used to concentrate power and deepen existing asymmetry. So, and this section starts with a chapter by Camilla Piantarelli, which is really important for this section, I would say. She argues that neurotechnologies are generating a new kind of informational asymmetry, not just between companies and consumers, but between powerful actors and our most intimate cognitive processes. So she talks a little bit about the new forms of economic exploitation rooted in this cognitive surveillance. So the chapter also talk about the abuse of power and so on and so forth. Then, in a complementary direction, I will say we have a chapter by Tiago Gagliano and Cecilia Alberto, who tackle a very difficult but important or urgent question, which is what does actually neurolaw look like in non-democratic contexts? How neurotechnologies can be weaponized to suspend freedom of thought and manipulate populations to entrench authoritarian control among others. So I think it's really, really important. The third section goes deeply into the legal regulation. So we have framed the problem, we have framed the more philosophical questions, and now it's, well, how does legal approaches, legal frameworks, or the lack of them, are governing neurotechnologies? And we open actually that section with the chapter by Ana Maria, who argues, this is my interpretation of Ana Maria, you can obviously, argues that the current patchwork of international soft law, so principles, declarations, guidelines, need to be hardened. And right now we have a huge amount of good intentions floating around, but very little binding regulation. So Ana Maria makes a call to fill this regulatory vacuum that exists in many national systems. The next chapter is one that I co-authored with Esteban Oyarzun, and we look more deeply into strategic litigation as tools for confronting abuses from neurotech, particularly from neurotech companies and artificial intelligence firms. There's no many cases, as you know, out there. So we bring kind of a strategic litigation on other human rights sectors and bring it or try to adopt a model of what may potentially strategic litigation in the context of neurotechnologies may look like. And the final paper in this section is that one from Natalia Monti, who highlights how Latin America is already playing a leadership role in neuro rights debate. Her chapters focuses on developments in Chile, Brazil, and Argentina, where neurotechnological issues are being integrated into either national or regional legal discussions. And frames it as an issue that, or she argues that the Americas, particularly Latin America, rather than Europe, are actually offering some of the boldest and most forward-thinking legal responses to neurotech. So as a whole, this section really underscores this kind of tension that exists between technological innovation and legal inertia, but also shows how or what is Latin America doing in this context. The next sections go more deeply onto minorities and discrimination, and how, or more specifically, how they can reinforce or even deepen discrimination against group already facing marginalization. I'll say that this is one of the most socially grounded sections of the book, and also one of the most challenging somehow. Now, we start with a chapter by Jana da Nóbrega Souza, who looks at how neurotechnology could be used to promote fairness, but also how it could easily do the opposite. No? And her focus is mostly on implicit racial bias in criminal sentencing and the use of neurotechnologies. Then we have a chapter by Denise Almeida de Andrade and Monica Sabucasia Machado, who take onto the issue of gender-based algorithm discrimination, and they connect it with broader concept of just transition, which is super interesting as well. We have another chapter from Patricia Moura Monteiro Cruz, Renato Vilardo de Mello Cruz, and Antonio Jorge Pereira Jr., who took at child influencers, yes, those children mostly on YouTube, on TikTok, and asked how do neuro rights apply to them. No? They make this case that children and adolescents engage in digital content creation and are particularly vulnerable to neurotechnological exploitation. And finally, María Concepción Rayón Ballesteros and José Luis González Áviles provide a very detailed and legal technical analysis of Veripol, which is an AI tool used by Spanish police to detect false crime report. They critique the idea and the dangers of automated suspicion being embedded into law enforcement systems. The final section is about updating neuro rights and really looks ahead. It asks not just how we define neuro rights today, but how we need to rethink, to expand, and to adapt them to keep pace with the technological developments. The section begins with a chapter by Francisco Luciano Lima Rodriguez, who raises a critical and often overlooked point as judicial systems adopt new technologies, AI tools, automated decision-making, digital case management. So what happens to the person who is at the center of justice? It's a powerful critique to judicial automation that focuses on human dignity mainly. Then we have Felipe Paredes, who brings a chapter which is a very sharp legal analysis to the current privacy framework surrounding neural data. He argues that the dominant model based on self-management and consent is no longer fit for purpose, and particularly in Latin American context, and most specifically in the Chilean context in this particular case. We have another chapter by Aline Pesos Maya, Raquel Pasos Maya, and Larissa Maciel do Amaral, who focuses on the workplace again, an area, as already been said in the first section, overlooked in neuro right debates, or kind of. And their chapter explore the commodification of free will and the cognitive extraction of the economy. And finally, in this section, we have a chapter by Tamami Fukushi, who takes a broader view on the co-evolution of neuroethics and neurotechnology, mapping the history of neuroethics, and reflects on how ethical frameworks must evolve alongside technological development. We have a closing note from Professor Keigo Kumamura, who offers like an epilogue, positioning NeuroLaw as an emerging field, not just an interdisciplinary curiosity, but a field as on itself, which is a field that sets question principles and have obviously its challenges. No, so what I try to do is not just to make a brief overview of and to thank obviously every one of the authors of this book by naming and saying what they have done, but also to show that NeuroLaw is not just a legal subfield. It's, I will say, a frontier of human rights that it pushes us to think some of the most foundational concepts in law. So think about issues about autonomy, consent, privacy, freedom of thought, equality, among others. And there are many practical questions that we have to think about. I imagine that we will have that discussion here, no? Um, Also, just to finish, I would like to highlight that, and I have already said this, that this is where I will say the Latin American contribution is really fundamental. No? Through the book, what comes very strongly is that neural rights are not treated only or purely as abstract construct. Instead, we are increasingly seeing it as concrete tools, and we are also observing concrete tools of democratic resistance and social transformation against these tools. No, so what is clear, I'll say from a Latin American perspective, and now I'm finishing, is that this perspective challenges some of the dominant global north assumptions. Now it questions the idea that regulation is not just about risk management, for example, but we tend to ask in this book, whose risks are these, whose innovation, whose data, and it brings the focus also into power asymmetries, not just between individuals and companies, but also between regions, between legal traditions, between systems of knowledge. In that sense, I will say that this book is not just filling a gap in the literature. It's, I will say, reimagining how law can respond to this technological change. So we hope that the book don't just sit in that virtual shelf that it's nowadays. We invite you to read it. We invite you to critique it, to use it, whether in research, in advocacy, in teaching, in policymaking. And I hope it makes also a good starting point, I would say, for future collaborations, for building bridges between disciplines, but also, as we are doing now to building bridges between different regions, languages, and legal systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. That was such a really clear overview of the book, and I'm really struck by your, overarching point, which is about the need for, I'd say, all academics, all scholars working in the broad field of neurolaw to really consider the consequences of the legal research and the impact of their own approach to some of the questions because in the kind of global north, some of the approaches or some of the position against non-commodification, for example, which to me is absolutely essential. We have to have standards of non-commodification of brain data, neural activity. But my sense is that such a position would be very quickly politicized in the global north, and therefore the task of persuading certain stakeholders in a position to establish those standards becomes a different task than a task where the politicalization of such an approach isn't as stark. And the context of Latin America is really, really, really essential. And I just want to now open up for any questions, any points of discussion, any feedback, anything at all.